everybody. Welcome back. So we are in week 7 in the semester. So we're almost there. We got next week and then spring break. And I know everyone's excited for spring break the following week. So I'm right there with you, looking forward to spring break as well. So last week, like I said, we had Dr. Moran come in. He was talking about some of the job opportunities there at OIT. So hopefully if you weren't with us in that session, definitely want to join, go on the website and watch that video because it was a really great one to be able to watch. So like I said, we try to alternate between company information sessions and then general meetings. So tonight we actually have a general meeting, which is sort of our newer general meetings that we just started. I think it was last year, what are called our MISA Tech Talks. So tonight we actually get to hear from one of our FAU MIS alums, one of our FAU MIS alums, as well as a MISA alum in terms of being our former vice president and our treasurer. So we're really excited to have our guest speaker here tonight speaking. So for those of you that are looking at the security concentration or some of the different paths or job outlooks or kind of where to go after you graduate, our speaker tonight is a good one to be able to ask those questions too. So without any further ado, I'll go ahead and pass it on to the speaker. So if we give a nice virtual and in-person round of applause for our amazing guest speaker, Mr. Christian Alfaro. You can sit or stand or whatever. What do you feel more comfortable?
Just because of the camera.
Well, I can move it.
Oh, standing's fine.
Okay, cool. And I'll adjust it for you. You get in your spot and then there we go.
All right. Thank you, Professor Sweet. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Christian Alfaro. As Professor Sweet mentioned, I'm a MISA alum. I'm here to talk to you about my experience at FAU and then my experience at my first job at Deloitte and my current experience at Citigroup. So without further ado, here we go. That's fine. So I graduated in 2018 with a degree in MIS. As Professor Sweet mentioned, I did the information security concentration. I did a minor in computer science and plus certification, which is IT certification, like general stuff for help desk. A lot of people usually ask me, like, how did I get the first job at Deloitte? Because I got a job in cloud, but I had no idea what cloud was. And I think it was just trying to make my resume stand out compared to other students. Let me see the picture better now. So yeah, I try to make my resume stand out. One way I did that was MISA, which is very important to get involved in extracurricular activities. Being the treasurer and the VP showed companies that you have leadership experience and that you can talk to people at least, So that was good to have on my resume. I also did some internships. I did a help desk internship at this company called Biotest Pharmaceuticals, which I don't think is around anymore, but I'm not sure. And I also did an internship at Booker Regional Hospital, but that was more data entry instead of help desk. So I only put the Biotest internship on my resume. So it's more relevant to what I was looking for. So that's this slide. My first job was at Deloitte. I started in 2018, in July of 2018. For the consulting firms like Deloitte, every job is the job is project-based, which means that everybody's experience could be very different depending on what department you end up on, and then which project you end up on in that department. Like I mentioned, I ended up in cloud. I had no idea what cloud was before I started, but the first couple of months were pretty much just setup and training. So I was really grateful to Deloitte for giving us that opportunity to learn pretty much a brand new career path for free. And they're paying you to do it. So that was really great. In the first 6 months there, I got 4 AWS certs. AWS is Amazon Web Services, which is one of the biggest cloud providers. 3 associate certifications and 1 professional. It's just different types of certs. My job consisted of supporting various SAP clients across 3 different cloud platforms: AWS, Google Cloud Platform, GCP, and Azure, which is Microsoft's cloud platform. SAP is this giant enterprise software that companies use, and they use it for a bunch of different things. Pretty much it runs a business, right? So we were doing kind of tech support for our clients, and we were doing whatever configurations they needed within our cloud environments. While this was a really good job, and I enjoyed it because I got to meet a lot of really cool people, I got to learn a lot, I didn't like some parts of it, specifically the on-call rotations, because who wants to be on call? Yeah, exactly. So we would work, we would pretty much be on call once a month for a week until 9 p.m. And then at 9 p.m., our other team in USI, which is like India, would take over, and they would support us until the next day. Right? Like somebody else would be on call on that side of the globe, and then we would come back in the morning. So, I mean, it was a really good learning experience. Like I mentioned, I got a lot of certs for free, and it was a great first step into the industry because it was like a way to get your feet wet and to pretty much to learn a lot. So I learned not just technology stuff, but also about, the corporate world, how to talk to managers, how to talk to clients. And I made some really good relationships that I still cultivate until today. Like I mentioned, I learned a lot about cloud. These are the 3 big players right now: Amazon, Google, and Microsoft. Each cloud provider has like a million different services that you could try to memorize and spend like hours studying about in these certifications. But at the core of it, it's just compute services, network services, and storage services. When we talk about compute, do we all know like what virtual machines are, right? The reason that a company would want to go and put their applications in the cloud is because they can focus on what their company wants to do, and they can outsource their IT operations to a company that can specialize in that, right? So if you're running, I don't know, a store online and you don't know about IT, you kind of don't want to put so much focus on you, like learning how to build a website when you can just outsource that, right? So we all use cloud technology every day. When you're on your iPhone and you use iCloud, right? We all do that. Companies do the same thing. You're just putting your files, your applications, your resources in somebody else's servers over the internet. We know about VMs. Do you know about containers? No, yes, no. So containers are like, let's say you have a VM is a virtual machine. A container is like another layer on top of that, right? If you have an application that you want it to run on Linux or Windows, like pretty much any operating system, you put it in a container with its dependencies, right? When you do app development on containers, it allows you to deploy pretty much on anything, because you don't need to worry about VMs, you don't need to worry about updates, you don't need to worry about all this other overhead that you would need with the VM. You can just deploy your app if something's wrong, take out that container, put in a new one, and you're good. That's it. Serverless computing, does anybody know what that is? It's like pretty much computing, like running code without needing a virtual machine or a container. It's just another layer of abstraction. So let's say you want to write some code that looks at your favorite band's website and download some tracks, right? You could write that code on your computer. It runs every day on your computer, but it's going to take up resources. When you use serverless, you're just using one of the cloud providers' resources. It runs, it turns off, you get your data, that's it. The good thing about cloud platforms is that everything is pay as you go. That's why companies like it. Instead of, like when you start your business, instead of buying a bunch of servers because you need to set up your website, you just go here and you only pay for the time that you need. So if you only need your website to run for a certain amount every day, you just pay for that certain amount and that's it. they can bill it down to like the second now, which is really amazing. Yeah, it's cool. And then when we talk about network services, talking about like firewalls, how your on-prem network connects to your cloud network. And for storage, it's a bunch of services that pretty much is how you're gonna store your data from your applications. So we covered like the basics of cloud. A topic I would like to cover today is cloud security. With cloud security, there's different types of, I guess, services within cloud. There's software as a service, platform as a service, and infrastructure as a service, which I'm pretty sure were mentioned in some of the classes I took here. Software as a service, anybody know what that is? Yes. You want to give like an example?
Oh, it's like the ERP system. Like if you just wanted to, you ran like a retail place, it's got to do your point of sales, do your inventory, your payroll.
Exactly. So it's software that you're only responsible for the data that you put in. You don't have to worry about anything else, right? Platform as a service is another layer kind of like below that, where you could develop on something like a platform, develop your application on that. And then infrastructure as a service is where you would create the infrastructure in the cloud for your application. So that's where you're spinning up VMs, you're spinning up containers, you're spinning up databases, stuff like that. All of these are part of, you can think of it in the shared security model, which is how the cloud providers operate. It basically means that part of the responsibility for security is like partly on you and partly on the cloud provider, depending on which service you have, right? So with software as a service, since you don't have to worry about updates, you're just inputting data, the security completely falls on the cloud provider, right? For example, the ERP, you don't need to worry about like encryption, data, like how the data is moving around firewalls, none of that, because the provider is taking care of all of that. With infrastructure as a service, you have to configure everything securely. So you have to make sure that the ports you're communicating over are secure, that your firewalls are set up correctly, that there's encryption in transit, there's encryption for data at rest, right? So since the whole point of cloud is to be able to use what you want and to be able to scale out, you have to have a lot of automation, right? That's where these controls come into place. There's preventative controls, detective controls, and remediation. So an example of a preventative control would be, let's say you want to spin up a VM and you set a firewall rule that would make that computer open to the internet. You have software that would look at the configuration before it gets spun up, and it would stop it from being created. It prevents it from being created. That's an example of a preventative control. A detective control would be resources that are already created, and the detective control looks at the configuration of those resources and can flag and alert you saying, this is insecure, you need to fix this. And then a remediation control is like the ultimate goal of automation, where it would do the detective control part and then also fix it for you right away. So if it finds a VM that's open to the internet, it automatically closes that firewall rule and you're good. Within cloud, all three cloud providers have this thing called IAM, which is Identity and Access Management. This is probably the most important thing within cloud security. That's where you're going to use the most. There is an example of an IAM policy over here. Let's read, but this is specifically for AWS. It says, this is a statement, the effect is allowed. In this case, it says DynamoDB star. DynamoDB is one of the database services for AWS, and star means you can do any action. And resource star means you can do any action on any resource. So this is something that's not like really secure. Does anybody know about the concept of least privilege? Yeah.
Basically,
Yeah, so in this case, this could be a user, a VM, a role, anything. You want to not give more access than is needed. It needs only the access for what it needs to do, and that's it. So if we had a database that needed to read from a specific S3 bucket, which is where data is stored, we would say like DynamoDB or S3 read a specific object only on a specific bucket. And that would be more secure than ***. Again, in IAM, everything in cloud is like roles versus permanent credentials. You want to use, or it's best practice to use a role. A role in this case provides temporary credentials, right? So you don't want to give access to users permanently, right? If somebody logs into your AWS account, you want to make them assume a role that has a policy that only has the permissions that they need. And you want to make sure that that role will expire within a certain time frame, depending on the use case that you want. Instead of having a user that can log in and has whatever permissions they want, and their creds won't expire for like 8 hours. You don't want that. Another thing that's big within the cloud providers is KMS. So all of these examples are AWS specific because that's what I work with the most, but the concepts are in all of the big cloud providers. KMS is the key management service. The key management service is specifically used to encrypt stuff and decrypt stuff. So with AWS, you would literally just press a button that says like create this key, you name the key, and this key can encrypt this data, and this key can unencrypt this data, and that's it. Another huge concept within cloud security is a VPC, which is a virtual private cloud. This is your virtual data center. You can use this to set up your network inside the cloud environment, and you can also use it to connect your on-prem network to your cloud environment. At work, there's different ways to do it. We have set up our environment so that we are extending our on-prem environment into the cloud, and I'll explain later. But does anybody know about subnets and like routing, stuff like that? Yeah, kind of. So when you have a network, you can set up sub-networks within that network. Those are subnets. And in your cloud environment, you can set certain subnets to be public or private. For example, the most basic web app would be a website in a public subnet that anybody on the internet can access. And then in a private subnet, you would have your application, and your application talks to your database. And those are both in the private subnet. With the cloud, it's like super easy to set that up because you can set all the firewall rules within your security groups, which are inside your VPC. Security groups just say like, this machine can talk to this machine on this port, and that's pretty much it. They're firewall rules. So that leads me to my current job at Citigroup. Citi is working on moving their applications from on-prem to cloud because they want to be able to scale their applications without having to worry about extra infrastructure, right? I currently work as a Cloud Security Operations Analyst, and I do a lot of development, mainly Python, some Bash scripting. I'm not great at Bash. And another big part of my job is vulnerability assessments, which is VA. We assess cloud applications. So the process is that a team will come to our team, to VA, and show us their architecture for their cloud application. And we'll say, you need to fix this, this, and that. They'll make it. We'll test, pretty much looking for misconfigurations like ***. If things don't have encryption enabled, if KMS isn't being used, stuff like that. And we'll put all of those findings into a report, and we'll send that report back to the team and tell them to fix it. But they have a certain amount of time to fix it, depending on if it's a high issue, a medium issue, or a low issue. So a day in the life of my job pretty much is all about automation. Every cloud provider has an API that you can interact with. You can use the website, and we do use the website when we're making our reports, like just to see all the information online, but the API will give you everything really fast. So for example, I had an issue where there was an S3 bucket that had some objects that were encrypted and some that weren't. There are like thousands of objects. So it would have taken me hours to look through each object all day, but I can write a script that calls the API and tells me if I need if that object is encrypted or not. And then I can put what's not encrypted in the report and send that back to the team. So I just spoke about report generation. We use a lot of cloud monitoring tools. How we talked about the preventative controls and the detective controls. For example, Prisma Cloud is a detective control that looks at all the accounts within our environment. And it tells you, you can set up rules for things that you're looking for how they're configured. So there's a bunch of rules that'll tell you if an S3 bucket is unencrypted, if a subnet is facing the internet, if a VM is out of, like if it needs to be updated, stuff like that. Sentinel is a tool that we use with Terraform. Is anybody familiar with Terraform? No? So Terraform is a tool that's used for infrastructure as code. So we talked about infrastructure as a service, which is how you would set up your virtual machines. You can code all of that out, so you don't have to go through the process each time of deploying your environment. You can just write a bunch of code that says, build these VMs. And when you press a button, it all gets built at once and it can all be destroyed at once. So Sentinel will look at that code for Terraform. And if there's configurations that are insecure that it doesn't like, it'll stop it from being created. And Twistlock looks at container images, which is like same thing as a VM image, something you would use to create a VM. It's like, so how you would use that to create a container. And it'll tell you if there's vulnerabilities on it, and it will not allow the container to be created if there are. We use a lot of Linux commands and the CLI to move around our environment, because interacting with the API, one of the easiest ways is the CLI, which is command line tools. And CI/CD stands for continuous improvement and continuous development, which means instead of building huge applications for your code, like making huge updates every time, you just make small incremental updates and you continuously work on your code like that. So that's the new way of making applications. Before, the old way was a waterfall methodology. Now it's more agile, which I think I also learned in some of these classes. So there you go. And speaking of learning, the learning never stops. So I'm currently studying for some stuff. I put some resources here if you guys are interested. For security certifications, I'm doing the OSCP, which is Offensive Security Certified Professional. And that is like really hard for me. This is my first security job, so I'm learning a lot. But this is an offensive cert. It's when you're doing red team and you're trying to hack into machines. So the test for this cert is, it's not just answering questions, but you have to hack into, I think, 5 different machines and write a report about that. And it's a whole process, but I'm learning. Cloud certs, there's this website, acloudguru.com, and also there's courses on Udemy. The courses on Udemy go on sale like every other weekend, so they're very useful. And they're really good to study for the cloud certs, because those are just a bunch of questions that you need to answer. And for Python, there's this website called exorcism.org. This is totally free. And it just provides a bunch of exercises for you to do, that you write stuff in Python to solve stuff. And it's really good practice for me, so I really like it. And with that, we can go to questions. So does anybody have questions?
One of the most common things that I get from students all the time, especially for those that are doing security, is what first job should I get right out of college when you get a degree? I know for the business analytics students, sometimes it's easier because they can get a business analytics job and it says business analyst. But oftentimes for the security focus, there's not like a first job that you're going to get that says, cybersecurity analyst. So what are some like recommendations you have for them in terms of getting that first job and kind of how you did?
Yeah, so I asked that same exact question to my manager when I was at Deloitte, and he told me that you spend your first year or two in a general IT job, which is what I was doing at Deloitte, like general IT, specifically in this case, cloud. So general cloud, and then you specialize in security after you wet your feet the first few years. So that's what I did at Deloitte. I learned everything about cloud in general, and then I decided I wanted to specialize either development or security, and I got a security job. So that's what I did.
Fine. A general IT role.
Yeah. While you're in your general IT role, study security and bring it up with your manager, your leadership that you want to move into that direction, and just learn it while you're there. And yeah, then move into security from there.
Mentioned your first job,
Mhm.
and you mentioned about the first 3 months.
Yeah, so that was just Deloitte doing that straight up because they're a huge organization. So everyone that got hired in the same hiring class as me was straight out of college. So everybody's first few weeks were just training. The people that were in different departments like software development or RPA did training for that, like more coding stuff. And we just did cloud training instead. So Deloitte just gave us like the websites I mentioned, like a Cloud Guru. They gave us memberships for that, and they just told us to go learn for a couple months.
What is your personal?
Personal computers? Yeah, keep it updated for sure. Don't visit sketchy websites. I use a VPN, but that's like not necessary. These days, you really don't need like Norton, for example. Windows Defender is good enough. Norton might be worse, honestly.
About the VPN,
Yeah. So I wouldn't use a VPN with the expectation that they're not going to find your real website. I mostly use it to stream stuff if I don't want to get buffering, honestly, because it's super cheap and I'd rather just watch it, stuff like that. So yeah, but even something that says that there's no logs, you don't really know that. So I wouldn't do anything sketchy. So prior to Deloitte, I had 2 internships. One was help desk and one was the Boca Regional Hospital, which was more data entry than help desk, or yeah, more data entry than actual IT. So that was the only experience I had. Yes.
What do you think that was the most helpful from college, from your college classes or your internships that actually it helped you with your first job at Deloitte? Like, for instance, you said that at Deloitte or now you do Python. What is it like from college to Deloitte that has it like helped you the most to succeed? Even though that you were training, but
So I would say 2 things. Yeah, it's a great question. The first thing, technical wise, the first programming class I took here was Java. And when you go to interview with the company straight out of college, they have that expectation for the level of knowledge that you have. So they're not expecting you to be an expert. For my interview with Deloitte, they asked me like principles or concepts of programming. There's 4 different things that I don't remember now, but I could talk through it because I had written enough code that, you can just explain it to the interviewer. The second thing that helped me a lot was MISA, actually. All these company information sessions, when there's people from companies here, you can take advantage and talk to them. And after a while, you notice a pattern and you know how to talk to companies and how to talk in an interview. So you know what they're looking for. Good question. Anything else? Yeah.
So starting off after college, how much of like starting off winging it?
Not too much. There's winging it because I didn't have that much knowledge, honestly. The computer science minor I did helped with like more technical stuff. I did a web development class that I really liked that I could talk to interviewers about, because even though that was small, a lot of applications are like a bigger or modified version of that. So that was good. But honestly, you can apply for companies because, like I said, they have that expectation that you don't have too much knowledge and they're going to train you anyway. So the advice I give is like, if you see a job that says like you need 5 years of experience, but you have 3, or if you need 3 years, but you're just out of college, you can always just talk with the interviewer and they can see that potential in you, that you can learn quickly, and you can get hired. Yes.
Did you have, I know students have, if a student is expecting that they want to go into a security role, a lot of the times they want to look at different certifications that they should just do to have under their belt. Was there any sort of entry level security certification that maybe if someone's expecting to go into the field and they want to make themselves more marketable, that maybe they could look at?
Yeah, the entry level cert for security is the Security Plus. How I did the A+, they're both by CompTIA, which is the organization that does those certs. And the Security Plus is the entry level one. A+ is like the help desk entry level. Network Plus is for networking. Security Plus is for security. There's also CEH, which is a certified ethical hacker, and that's also entry level.
And how is that exam kind of structured so that you can give everybody like, is it like you said before, with multiple choice where you just kind of have to know that thing, how?
So I didn't do the Security Plus. The Network Plus was multiple choice, and I think there was a lab portion at the end, but they might have changed the exam since the last time I took it because it was years ago.
But did you prep for it with some of the courses Udemy, or did you do another, like what was your other prep that you?
Yeah, I did courses on Udemy. There's a bunch of practice tests. There's a lot of videos, video courses, and it's great to learn. It's a great resource. Yes.
It's all right. Yeah. Intelligence, actually, so
Like AI currently.
yeah, they are actually just access and it when yes.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if they're being used currently to attack stuff. They probably are, but like on the other side of that, there's a lot of security monitoring tools that will use AI and look at the patterns for users logging in to be able to determine if this is normal activity or if it's malicious.
We were using the news and we talking about the solution planning, the hacker attacks there.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're talking about this.
Yeah, it could be in use, honestly. Even with the cloud providers, they provide services where you could set up AI, what's the word called, like a model, and train it on the cloud providers, and then you could have that do whatever you want.
Are you working remotely for future?
Yeah, so when I started, we were going to the office every day, and then after a while, I was remote 2 times a week. And then when COVID happened, I was fully remote. And now we're going back to the office, I believe in March, and we have to go at least 2 times a week, and that's it.
Is it down here?
Yes, I'm sorry. It's in Fort Lauderdale,
Oh,
right next to the executive airport.
and another question is, what
Strong points in interview setting. That's a good question.
and did you have any like certification?
At that time, I only had my internships. I believe the strong points were being able to take the experience that you had, not just work-wise, but the projects that you've worked on, and relate that to what the company is looking for. So that, I think, is a good interview skill that anybody can work on. Anything else?
Is there something, like looking back now, you could, I guess, talk to the earlier classes and going through the grind and everything? Like, is there anything that you would tell some of the students now that, like, I wish I would have done this, or I wish I would have paid attention to this, now that you're in the field and like?
That is a good question. I'm trying to think. I mean, like, I don't want to say I didn't pay attention in class. I did. I'm not sure. I don't think I would change anything, because I learned a lot. The computer science minor like really supplemented what I liked about the MIS program, because it was like going more in depth on that side and being able to learn new languages that way. Yeah. So
Culture or
yeah,
technical aspect of it?
the work-life balance is the biggest difference. At Deloitte, we had on call. It was, since it's a client-based company, I'm not saying Citi isn't, but there was more of on the team that I was on at Deloitte, everything was like the client comes first. So like, even if you were trying to fall asleep at 10 p.m., if there was an issue, you're gonna get a phone call, you got to go online and work on something. But at Citi, I don't have on call on my team, because we don't have to worry about that right now, since we're a BA and not the SOC, which is Security Operations Center. Like, they probably have on call, but we don't. So I have more time to work on hobbies, to learn outside of work, because like, when you spend all day in front of a screen, the last thing you want to do after work is spend more time on a screen looking. But here, it feels okay, because you're not stressed about it. Yeah. Great question.
Internships that you recommend, like if students, say maybe they don't have any IT experience, and some internships that you can suggest that you did.
Yeah. Oof. So I got my first internship from going to a career fair, and I got the Deloitte job for going to a career fair. So my advice is go to career fairs, because you never know what's going to happen. The Deloitte job I got, I had like literally just one resume left from that career fair. I was about to leave, and they were like right on the way as I was exiting, and they were only looking for master's students. But he's like, "Oh, I'll take your resume anyway," and it worked out. You never know, exactly. Yes.
What's your vision about social media hackers?
Social media hacker?
No, I'm sorry. How do we think about the use, like when,
Oh, so like social engineering?
if you are very. focused.
Okay, yeah. So I don't post that much on social media. I would be careful with what you post. There's a bunch of people looking at, your LinkedIn and trying to connect to see who you work for. They try to send you work emails with weird links, phishing. We've all heard about that. Social engineering is part of that, where they'll research your target and then try to get you in a phishing attempt. So not that like, don't post anything on social media, but just be smart about it. Business side to IT related issues. I guess that was more, actually, no, it is prevalent here in this job as well. The business side would be talking with clients at Citi. Our clients are internal teams of Citi that are trying to build their applications. So knowing how to talk to those clients and trying to get, their needs and working with them, all of that I kind of learned here at, the College of Business, because you can understand what they're trying to achieve and you can talk to them easily. Anything else?
The next one.
Thank you.
Goodie bag, like probably have half the stuff already.
Thank you.
Awesome. So, thanks everybody. Thanks for all of you for, I know you were doing the virtual round of applause on there too, so we appreciate that. Let me just go ahead and stop the recording. Here, yeah.